At least once a week, someone comes up to me and asks, "Where did you get your tan from?" You know how I answer? I say, "My father."
This is the Lenora Faye Show.
Welcome to this episode called "What Are You?" The subtitle is going to be called Biracial Blues. And I actually Googled that because it's a thing. I mean, I know it's a thing, I live it, but wanted to know if there was a definition. And according to AI, it says biracial blues generally refers to the unique emotional and social challenges of being mixed race. It represents the feelings of isolation, identity confusion, and the pressure of not neatly fitting into a single racial category. So, you know what? Yeah, that checks out. That checks out. So, to lighten the mood here, pardon the pun, I have a feeling that I'm going to be using a lot of puns in this episode. To lighten the mood, I am going to do a little bit of description here. Now, if you are new to this podcast, I have been doing audio for a while. The first version of the show was audio, but now we've incorporated video, which means the wigs are now active. So if you are listening to this on any kind of podcast platform, you might want to watch this episode, which is on YouTube. And if it's on Spotify, the video is also on Spotify. But if you just want to listen, that's totally cool. But I'm going to give you a description of my hair and my outfit because that is important for the topic at hand today. So I am wearing a collarbone length wig that is white and black. I am wearing an outfit, and you can only see a part of it, and I'll post a photo of this outfit um later in the show. And I am wearing a white, this is actually a dress, a short dress, but I'm wearing a dress that is white with black stripes, and I have bedazzled it, but you can't really see that through the camera. That is my way of humorously letting you know what kind of biracial I am. I am half black, half white. And I am going to post a photo of my parental units in this episode as well. Again, if you're listening and the video is not available wherever you're listening, totally cool. I'm just sharing that for reference. Now, I have broken one of my rules in saying when you have a joke and you have to explain it, it's no longer funny. Because if you're watching this, you're probably going to get the Easter egg of my outfit, which is relevant to the title of this show, this episode. That's the first thing. I feel like there's going to be a few things that I'm going to have to explain. But again, that is very fitting to being biracial. We're freaking explaining everything all of the time. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Lenora Faye. I am your host. I am your favorite podcast host. And that will make sense when I talk about the favorites a little bit later in the show. Again, it's a play in my name. The more you listen to the show, the more it will make sense. I might not make sense, but that's the point. This show is my personality. So, as per usual, I like to talk about a variety of subjects that are challenging, harder to talk about, but with some, pardon the pun again, lightness to it. Because you need to use humor, otherwise, what's the point of, life? It just makes it easier to get through. So, I went through my catalog of personal stories from childhood through current day about being mixed race. Now, as I said, I am half black, half white. Black father, white mother. Born and raised on the Canadian prairies. And I come from what I would describe as a color neutral household, meaning I saw both my mom and my dad every single day of my childhood, and no one talked about the differences in skin color. They were very obviously two different colors, but nobody said anything. And it wasn't until probably kindergarten around there that, kids started to say something. And s that was me entering into the world of the question for life, going, why are you brown? So while this episode focuses on my experience being mixed race, if you're not mixed race, this is about identity. I know a lot of my audience, and we all come from a variety of cultural backgrounds. And some of you have shared over the years your experience trying to fit into your culture and feeling different from what's expected. And even if you are not ever mistaken for anything else, or it's very clear where you belong, there's probably something about your identity that you feel a little bit misplaced as well. There'll be something in this episode that you connect to. So I don't feel like I'm ostracizing anyone who's listening. Although, if you are someone who goes up to people and says, "Oh my God, where'd you get your tan from?" Can I just say, please stop that? I'm going to get into that again soon. I think I've now covered everything I wanted to preface before I get into the stories. So I was going through again like a catalog of experiences I've had, trying to figure out where to start and like again I feel like this will be a topic I'll address a few times in the course of this show because there are so many things and I don't want to go on forever, although I probably could. But I did make a little list. And I was going to start with the funniest one first. The funniest one that I can remember at the moment. So, as some of you know, I used to be a violin instructor, and when I was in college, I went to I went to college not for music, but I was hired by the city that I went to college in. I was hired by the community orchestra to be an instructor. So I had this little student, and I remember his name. So his name was Braden, and I haven't kept in touch with these kids, so they're going to be totally adults now because at the time I would have been 19. And where I'm from initially and where I went to college, which it's in a province called Saskatchewan. And if you really want to know what the city is called Moose Jaw. Like I feel like I've had a pretty Canadian experience as a Canadian. So I was teaching in this city in Saskatchewan called Moose Jaw, going to college, and I had this little student named Braden. I can't remember how old he would have been, but he would have easily been under 10, between 5 and 10. And I developed carpal tunnel syndrome, so I would wear a brace on my right hand, which is my bowing arm. And I do not remember how this came about. I think it was probably because I would go to everyone's house, right? So I'm pretty sure it was because the mom had commented on the brace I was wearing, and I, explained why I was wearing it. And I can't remember why the conversation shifted to the little kid about commenting on my arm, but he said to me, "Yeah, it's sure making you look black." And I find that hilarious now. I think I found it hilarious then, but I have to say I was stunned. And that's generally the reaction I get when people say weird things to me. So, so the mother, to her credit, and this part again, this is where it's funny to me. The mother, who's white, and the boy, like the family was white. So the mother looks at her son and says, "And you know that why that is, right? Like why Lenora is darker skinned." And again, I don't come across as super dark in camera. In person, and now at the time of this recording, this is July. So I am not as dark as I usually get in the summer, but I'm getting there. I'm not my winter color. So I don't know what time of year that was. So if you're all confused, believe me, we'll talk about my appearance soon. But anyway, so I'm not anyway, I'll get into that. So the mother says, and you know why that is. And I'm assuming the little boy realized what he had said, or realized maybe he had been taught, that not everyone is of not everyone is as white as what I'm wearing. And the poor little kid, he got so embarrassed and he buried his face in the couch cushion. I remember that. And at that point, I was pretty good at just kind of brushing things off. And I wondered how I was gonna feel recording this. Not because like I don't it's not that I haven't had this conversation thousands of times in my lifetime. And, and I mean this is the point. At least once a week I do get asked, where do you get your tan from? And my answer is my father. And then I have to launch into something. But I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. So that's probably that's the funniest thing I can remember right now of dealing with, a socially awkward situation. And, nobody gives you a playbook. And again, I'm only speaking as a biracial person. I am aware through friends and like my dad's family who they have two black parents where I have one. You know, I come from a family like their family is they don't talk about it too much. My aunts have been, opened up more, but my dad and I have rarely talked about his experience. I know his thought process. I know how he feels. So obviously, as I've gotten older, he has said things. But growing up, like I said, I grew up in a color neutral household in northern Alberta, where it was mostly white people, and I wasn't raised around my dad's family. I saw my mom's family, and I saw my grandmother, my dad's mom. But no one, like I didn't have a concept of what biracial or why I was brown. I just, that's what my parents look like, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't even I had no concept of color change, even though I could see it, but it didn't register. I didn't know anything. And then you go to school and kids start calling you Brownie, and that's why I do not allow nicknames for myself to this day. There are the odd exception, but it's Lenora or nothing, and don't call me nothing. But that was the start of it for me. And I do remember, I think it was my white grandmother. Actually, to make this a little more fun, my brother, who's younger than I am, he had nicknames. He had his chocolate grandma and his vanilla grandmother. And so my vanilla grandmother, she bought me two Cabbage Patch dolls. One was brown and one was white. And I remember hanging on to the white one a little more. I looked like a little brown Cabbage Patch doll when I was a kid. I was really cute. Um, But so began the journey of navigating life as a biracial person in, at the time, a place that was predominantly white. And because this was not a conversation that I really had, I didn't know how to ask it. I didn't even really know anything. I had no concept. And again, growing up without television, I did not have a concept of how Black people were portrayed. Like it was, even when I'm speaking about this now, it's all very odd to me. I don't really have a landing place. So elementary school was challenging, junior high, and then well, no, I never went to junior high because when I moved to by age 12, I moved to a city where it was middle school, which I hated, and then high school started in grade 9. So throughout my entire school career, it was a challenge because I learned that people had, like kids had expectations of what a Black person should look like. And then, always having, I was always several shades darker than my friends. And that, I don't remember there being a conversation about that. It didn't matter. It's just people would comment, adults would comment. Adults were nice. They would say I was pretty, but kids would tease me, so I didn't feel pretty. So I struggled with that. And, as a kid, when you don't have, there was a lot of things that I didn't have access to. Again, growing up in the religion I grew up in, we had no TV. We didn't celebrate holidays. I was weird on so many levels. Always had to wear a dress, which I still do now, but it's my choice. So there was a lot at play. And I remember this just came to my mind. I remember grade six, we had to do some sort of art project and we had to do like a self-portrait. And I remember my nephew, my youngest nephew, who is quite light skinned because now he would be a quarter black, is is said this to me, and I remember this happening to me as well, is the skin color pencil back in the, well, this would have been the early 90s. Flesh color, well, flesh color was like peach, and I wasn't that. So I colored myself flesh color, which, was not this. And I think that started something in me, that's around age 11, 12, where I was already aware and I was very reactive. I was very reactive as a child. When kids on the playground would call me Brownie, this was in like really northern Alberta. And my response was, "You're a vanilla ice cream cone." I didn't know the term cracker. But I don't know, do people say that still? Anyway, I would call everyone a vanilla ice cream cone. That was just, I wasn't shy, but I was shy about explaining why I looked the way I did. And then as I got older, it was the opposite experience. It's like, well, you don't look black, so why are you saying you're part black? And then I would carry a photo of my father. There was no arguing with that. And then I realized, okay, so my features don't look black. Now I will post a photo of me because I wear wigs for this podcast, which I didn't know that black women wore wigs or weaves or any of that. I mean, again, I still don't have I have a little more understanding of the culture a bit now from my friends, mostly my African American friends, not so much my family. But um, so anyway, there were many things. I still feel very green about the whole thing. Actually, I should give myself more credit. I've had a lot more conversations about this over the last few years. So it's I'm not as bad as I was as far as being aware. But this is the thing. This is the thing. And if you are mixed race, or if you are maybe from like one culture but different kinds, because I have friends that have explained that to me too. It's just the, wait a sec, I still don't fit in. So that's very much what it's like. It's that it seems like every phase of your life, you discover a new way where you are slightly different. And then you develop your own identity, but you don't really know where to land with it. And I don't know if I still know where to land with it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I don't fully I don't feel white. I don't feel black. I lean more to my dad's side of the family, which is black, because I have that personality. I have more the look. I look like my dad in a dress. Um, but at the same time, my features are different. My nose, my lips, like my coloring, like I don't, people think I'm a white girl with a tan, or I get mistaken for, and again, this goes back to the title. What are you? People ask me that all the time. What are you? And I say I'm biracial. And then I say what, how specifically. And if I'm in a good mood and if the vibe feels right, and this is something that I will address, but maybe I'll just address it now. Is that when people come and say, "Where'd you get your tan from?" or "What are you?" I have a different response every time, because I just realized that as I was thinking about this episode. And this is where I get mad when I think about it too much. I'm jumping ahead. I was going to start with funny, which I've done. I was going to go to annoying next, but I'm going to jump to the mad part. I get mad when I get caught off guard with this question, because I've had it in professional settings where people have asked, and this is where people don't realize when they're asking a question like that, is that the person that's going to respond, it's not, you have to consider the room, you have to consider the person, you have to consider your environment, right? There are some cases where people have asked me that question, and I have to pause for a second, because what I would maybe normally say in a social setting, I can't say in a professional setting, or I have to word it differently. Or clearly I am across from a person who uh not that I fear like a racist response necessarily, although that has happened, just ignorance more than anything. But I'm like, I can't joke with this person. I don't get that vibe from them, so I have to be serious about it. And so then I've got to formulate like all the answers I will give are true. But then I am learning as I get older that sometimes I'm like, do I have to educate somebody? That yeah, like a black person and a white person can procreate and have a person who looks like me. Or, like there's so many different things. And before I would have said something just off the cuff or, usually I try and keep it light and funny, again, pardon the pun. Um, and then sometimes that leads into a bigger discussion or people get embarrassed. That happens more than anything. And that is funny. And that's another okay. I gotta fill in a few more gaps before I launch into what I want to say because I want to bring this episode to a place where, you can somehow identify. Again, when I think of there's so many elements to this episode where I'm like, okay, we're all talking about identity. We all want to identify with something. So I'll continue the anger piece in a bit, but the annoying one, and this one happened, well, in the last year. Um, I was in an office and there was a lady sitting across from me at a desk, and she puts her arm out next to mine, and she says, and then she touches my arm and she says, "Oh, you're looking a bit brownie." Now this one, because it's still fresh for me, this is where I found myself going, I didn't know how to respond because I was in a professional setting. And I didn't know I said something. I mean, I'm usually pretty quick in my responses. I mean, I'm good at riffing and banter and all that stuff. But this is where, do we want to banter when we're biracial? Like with people who are clearly not? This is borderline anger me coming out here. So I said to her, and this is where I had to tell my friends about this, my group of girlfriends, because I was not quite happy with my response or my delivery, I should say, my delivery, because I stuttered a bit and I don't stutter, but this is the thing. And this is why I say if any of you who are listening have ever said, "Where do you get your tan from?" Consider what you're looking at first. Just think about it. Because someone said that to me, like just first of all, the brownie thing. Now that again, that was a hurtful comment I had from kids my entire elementary school experience. So do not like that word. Even though I like a brownie, I'm not. I thought I was okay, but when she said that, and she was not, she had no idea. Clearly, based on how the conversation went after that, she had no idea. And this is where a little bit of anger comes in for me because I clearly don't present as black enough, which is a biracial thing because there are biracial people that look almost full black or they have enough of the features that people expect a black person to have. Again, I recognize with my features are European looking more or less, and I look like a white girl with a tan. So I had to say, well, I am half black, half white. And my delivery wasn't quite as firm as I wanted it to be because I was really not prepared for that. Even though I do get that question a lot, but it wasn't a question, it was a statement she made. And as I'm saying this, I'm starting to realize that like it was a statement. And I'm not saying it was a bad statement, but this is where people have to understand when you say shit like that. Sorry. I'm gonna swear on my podcast. Not as much as like I don't overly swear, but in this case, this is some anger speaking here. When people say shit like that, and then I have to quickly think, okay, well, I need to make a point. I'll answer. I'll answer. But I don't love this conversation. So again, I said half black, half white. And then she said to me, because she had seen me before, again, professional setting. I'm not going to explain the situation, but she said, "Oh, last time I didn't notice," and then it got really awkward. And I said, "Yeah," said I've always been brown. And then the conversation went back to the paperwork on the desk. Yeah, and you know, I am surprised. I am surprised that I was not. I guess maybe I didn't think I had to be prepared in that moment, and that's what makes me think, and that's what made me want to record this episode sooner than later. This was an episode that was like later down the list of shows that I'm doing, but um, I realized, okay, so I've accepted how I am, and I have these conversations a lot, and I'm not shy about these conversations. That's the only thing I want to do on the show is talk about shit like this. Okay, I'm swearing a little more now. But that experience was annoying, but it leads to anger of not having a clear place to identify with. Because, as I have listened to the stories of my African American female friends, my black friends, I clearly don't have the same experience, nor would I expect to, right? And that's fine. That's fine. It's just I realize that being mixed race is a challenge, and that actually leads to something that I saw. I have some happier stories coming up, don't worry. But this is the thing. This is things that we go through when we identify. And actually, there's a couple more things with students that's coming to mind as I'm sharing this. But um, okay, I just lost my train of thought. Uh, this is a thing with identity that when you're going about your day as you are. You probably are aware of who you are, what you stand for, how you identify. I mean, this can even be, sexual identity as well, right? And believe me, that'll be a topic I'll bring up later in another episode. But, we're just going along about our day. And then, sometimes we're prepared to answer questions, and I'm used to being asked about it. But I think in this case, it's sometimes something is delivered to us, is said to us in a way that really catches you off guard. And then you realize you have to explain your identity to someone, and you almost have to justify it. I think that's what I have an issue with. I mean, I'm not blaming her. I'm not mad at her necessarily. I would, and a friend of mine, when I was sharing this, a friend of mine did say, you could, some of them gave me, not advice, but they gave me suggestions for the next time something like that happens and I get caught off guard. Like, I realized that I might want to ask, like, why are you asking that question? And again, this is a thing. This is a thing. We don't have to justify how we are. I mean, it's for me, it's pretty easy. It's like, well, I was born to two parents of two different colors, like, what do you want? Um, but as I get older and I realize, I can read the other person, like, where is this coming from? If it, in this case, like, more often than not, especially women, I find white women, full white women. I really don't identify as a white woman, but I am, I'm probably, to some people, you probably think I am white. Totally fine. Totally fine. Only half white. Not to be confused with a half wit. Although, okay, focus, Lenora. Um, I find with white women, especially, and then they do the whole comparison, like this lady did. She's like, oh, she put her arm because apparently she came from some sort of vacation. And I get asked a lot, where were you just on vacation? And I say no. And then the blank look, and again, this is mostly from women. Men do say things from time to time, but it's a little bit worded a little bit differently. And then the woman will kind of stop, and then I go, okay. And then my brain goes, all right, you have to explain. So I say, half black, half white. And it's amazing because a lot of times I can see a sense of embarrassment. I can't recall a man feel embarrassed seeing, like, getting the vibe that a man was embarrassed about that. They usually say that I am attractive. They're like, oh, that's where you get your beautiful coloring from. Women do say that too, but a lot of times a woman, I find they are thinking about the aesthetic because either they tan themselves or, I do have a nice tan. I'm aware of that. But they're not expecting me to say that because I don't look like what people expect probably a half like a half black person to look like even. Because also I don't have the hair texture. Again, wig, I'll you by now you've probably seen I've probably posted a photo in editing of what my hair looks like. And no, I don't look like what people would expect. And how do I feel about that? Well, I mean, I don't even know how to feel about that because it's kind of beyond my control here, right? But it's navigating daily life in the back of my mind, knowing that people will be curious, and the curiosity is fine. It's just sometimes the delivery is very awkward, and I don't mind people asking me questions about anything. I mean, I wouldn't be a good podcaster if that were the case. Like, I mean, this is the premise of the show. It's about my life, right? And again, just to reach people and realize we all navigate weird things or normal things, but we have to operate from different spaces, right? So, when I think about the anger piece and I was looking to see if I had something that was like a really angry interaction, but I realized it was more about me not feeling like I had a strong identity because I didn't fit into quote unquote any world on either side. And that's pretty much the standard for biracial people. I mean, again, and I'm speaking again from my experience of half black, half white. A lot of times, like I have met mixed race people who look like they can identify at least which one side. I always get Spanish, I get Métis, I get Indigenous, I get sometimes East Indian, which I really don't see, but people guess everything. This is kind of sometimes, a lot of times, I have fun with it. I say, well, guess. What do you think I am? No one gets it. No one gets it. I said, you have one or two guesses. No one ever gets it. Ever, 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 ever. Now that I've said that, tomorrow someone will well, yeah, this episode's not airing tomorrow from the day I'm recording this, but watch tomorrow someone will know exactly. They'll get it right. They'll get it right. So I want to I want to find a pain point that we kind of all can understand, whether you're biracial or not. And when I think about sharing this story, and then I will end on like the nice notes of um nice things people have said because, got to keep this light. No, it goes dark and light. Oh, you know what? I could go on forever with these puns. That's my humor. Thank you for sticking with me at this point. Oh, okay. I just remember there was something else I wanted to add. About even talking about the subject of identity, specifically biracial. I saw this comment. I had gone on social media to see if there was a specific topic that biracial people were talking about online, and I didn't really see one particular theme. It was just all the standard, what are you? Where'd you get your tan from? All that standard stuff. But I saw a comment, and this comment rings true because I've had comments like these before personally, where they say, well, you're beautiful. Why talk about this? What's the issue? What's the issue? Oh my, okay. Back to the anger piece. What's the issue? It's very similar to when Child for People speak up, And we see online, why are you talking about this? If your life is fine, don't talk about it. You have a great tan. You look great. Like, why is this an issue? Why is this an issue? Are you kidding me? It's an issue because we have every day we have to be ready for someone to ask us questions where we have to I don't people don't understand that it puts you in a vulnerable position. And I have on the other side of things, people going, "Well, you're light skinned. Who freaking cares?" This is coming from a dark skinned person, you know? But it is an issue. It's because I really can't go through my life without explaining what I am because people are curious. And curiosity is fine. I'm a very curious person myself. And I am someone that can navigate for the most part answering the questions. And obviously I'm speaking about it. And I think when I was starting to get into the online space around 2018 and during the lockdown, that's when I started, I think it was a Black History Month. I can't remember. There was something going on. And again, being Canadian, I felt removed from the situation, but I made a video for the first time about being biracial, and I talked to my brother about it, and I realize as I get older, I'm more comfortable because it was something I hated as a kid. Not I hated having to answer questions. I hated it. And I'm thinking of like so many things now that actually I could share that were funny but hard to navigate at the time. So when someone says, "Well, what's the issue?" It's because we can't just go live our life. People are curious and they want to know and they ask. And we tell them. But and I'm not saying that every biracial person has an issue with this, but I would be surprised if they didn't because the identity thing is it's hard when you seemingly, fit into one particular group. So I'm gonna share a few things in rapid succession here, just to round out the experience of what it's like. And take whatever you want, however you want it. So, elementary school, I was in my second hometown, again, northern Alberta, but not quite as north. Didn't have a TV, had no idea who O.J. Simpson was. I'm assuming you guys all have Google. If you don't know who O.J. Simpson was, well, I don't know what to tell you. You probably grew up like I did, but even I know who he was. So I remember being at the bus stop, and we lived in a nice community. My dad was a businessman my entire life, and out in the public and whatnot. And kid said, "Is your dad O.J. Simpson?" I didn't know who that was. No idea. No TV. Didn't really listen to the radio at that point, at least with news. And again, I was up in northern Alberta, so it's not. I have no idea what was being shared from the U.S. or what. Like I had no concept. Had no idea who O.J. Simpson was. So I said no. And then so I think so that would have been the time when everything went down and before the trial. That would have been a year before that or when everything went down. So I guess that was 94. Yeah, it makes sense because 95 I moved to Southern Alberta and started reading People magazine because I was 12 by that point. And then I discovered who O.J. Simpson was. And so the running joke my brother and I have with our dad is that he looks like a mixture of Bill Cosby and O.J. Simpson. Fortunately, nice. Now it's interesting because the timing of this episode comes out after the episode I just talked about distancing from my father for 5 years, but it had nothing to do with looking like those two people. And I realize those are really, really, really terrible comparisons. Um, but again, not having an understanding of Black culture, of what Black is, right, as a child, and being half and half and not being able to explain. Like back then is when I think until the age of 12, I couldn't explain that I had two different color parents. I you see things but you don't like no one said anything to me, didn't explain anything to me, so I couldn't articulate. And then I became better at articulating and then it was oh well, you don't look black enough to be black. So like how is that possible? Oh Lord, you know. So there was that. So again, this one just came to mind. I was in college, and where I went to college, people knew my parents due to the religion because the religion existed like everywhere. Um, Again, secretive religion. No name can be classified under the C word, but it's tricky for me to use that right now as I'm trying to figure out how to explain how I grew up. But anyway, so I was out for dinner with even though I was no longer like practicing in that religion. I would occasionally tend to service and because these people like there was a lot of people in that town or city that knew my parents, I would, occasionally socialize. And one lady said to me, she's like, "Your dad is so nice for a black man." Again, I had no concept of what that meant. Which leads me to my mom's father, my grandfather. Now, before I share this story, my mom's immediate family, like, so my mom is dead. My uncle and aunt are dead, her siblings, and her parents are dead, which kind of helps me share what I'm about to share. I knew my grandfather passed when I was 12. So I don't have a lot of memories with him, but he was a nice man and he gave us money and my mom said that he treated my dad well and he, treated him with respect and he treated his grandchildren well. But my mom told me what I'm about to share. She told me this shortly before she passed away and we rarely talked about race. Mom was a little bit more open, which reminds me, there's a joke that she said to me and my brother that I have to share. But anyway, mom told me that her dad didn't come to her wedding. And I had seen photos of my parents' wedding. It was really small. They had it in the backyard of their house that they bought. They married when they were 20 and 21. And it never occurred to me that I'd never seen my grandfather in those photos. I just, didn't think much about it. But she told me that he intentionally did not come to her wedding because she was marrying a black man. And even as I say that, it's so weird because my dad is a black man, but he's not a black man. You know what I mean? Like well, no, you wouldn't know what I mean, but maybe some of you would. It's because he comes from a family where they're very obviously black people, but it's not a point of discussion. My dad was very, I will say my dad whitewashed himself. And there'll be some of you that know what that means. And that's fine. That was his choice. Um, but my mom told me that, and that has stayed with me. And then, several years ago, long after she passed, I spent a weekend with my uncle, so her brother, and then he ended up passing away 6 months after a visit. After a visit, I'm not to blame for this. He passed away what would be 6 months after the last time I saw him. But before he passed, we had a very, very we had days of conversation, and he opened up and told me many, many things. And the topic of my mom's wedding came up, and he confirmed what my mom had always said to me. Well, said once to me. Was that it's true. My grandfather did not show up to the wedding. He liked my dad. My uncle told me the reaction that my grandmother had the first time she saw my dad because they met in college. Mom and dad met in college, and it was kind of that they were that was it. They were friends and then got together and got married and were married for 27 years until she passed away. And that was now almost 20 20 years ago now, coming up 21. Anyway, so he confirmed everything, and he also now this stuff I won't share, but he shared some conversation that he had with his sister, so my aunt, but what they discussed on the way to the wedding of my mom and dad. So there was definitely stuff behind the scenes with the white side of my family, but I mean, I was fine to learn that all now. I mean, at the time, because, it was just, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It was interesting. So that happened. And then, I mean, again, there's just, it seemed like there's endless stories but that's normal for me. Don't love it, but that's just part of my experience. And again, being a biracial person, I think the point I want to make is that outwardly it appears that we don't have a struggle. You know, People talk about blend. It's nice. It's beautiful. It's all those things. But it's challenging because we hear the struggles of the black side. There are struggles of the white side, which, people don't talk about as much because it seems wrong to. And then a lot of times, especially how things have progressed in North America over the last few years, it kind of feels like you have to pick a side, but then it's like, are you qualified to pick a side? You know what I mean? And you can't. Well, I mean, no, that's not true. You can, but I can't. I don't feel like I can because my experience is different, and both are true for me. And I have no solution, and I'm not looking for a solution. I'm just saying this is what it's like to navigate that. All right, let's again lighten things up here. Sorry. All right. Some nice aspects. Besides having the superpower of tanning through the freaking windshield on the way to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Before I launch into the happy stuff to wrap this up, I just want to talk about ways that we can have audience participation because I'm not making this an interview show. I'm not making this a co-hosted show. But I have created a community of sorts called the Favorites, and it's just a place for us to discuss like topics on the podcast. And currently, it's on Instagram. And in the show notes, I'll show you or I'll link to where you can go find it. But I'm gonna introduce a segment called favorite feedback. So anyone listening to the show, whether you are on social media or off social media or participate, you are a favorite. So if you have heard anything that I've shared over any of the episodes that I've published since 2024, which I had a kind of a pre-season trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this space, and now I'm on my vision. But anything you've ever heard or you've seen me post about or a topic, and you want to share a story, ask a question, maybe disagree with me, feel free to send me your feedback because I am going to incorporate that into the show. And again, it can be anonymous, it can be whatever you want. If you like, I don't have to like broadcast your name or anything like that. But I'm going to start incorporating that into the show as things progress. So I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok. You can send DMs to both places. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do the email thing because I don't necessarily want to give out my email, but I'll set something up. But even you know what? If you're watching this on YouTube, if you are watching, listening or watching on Spotify, if you're listening on Apple or whatever podcast platform, or a lot of you listen in the browser, so you can leave comments on the Substack as well. Wherever it's easiest for you to leave a comment or share a story or what have you. Or if you say, I have something private I want to share, I'll reach out. I want to incorporate that into the show because I think it would be a nice interaction. It's not mandatory, but if you feel so inclined at any point, feel free. Some nice stories that I've had over the years. There were two stories that really helped me start to become comfortable with being mixed race. And it has to do with appearance. I won't lie. And they were nice comments that boys gave me. Grade six, I remember this boy named Jamie, and he said to me, "You have a nice tan. You just look like you're from California." You know what? Maybe that's why I'm so obsessed with California because I again never I hadn't never been to I'd been to Montana at that point and Alaska. Didn't know where California was. Had no concept of California, but it sounded nice. Um, and I have to say that stuck with me. That was a really nice thing for him to say. I was not used to kids saying nice things. I had some female friends who would say, "Oh, you're so pretty" and stuff like that, but I did not believe them because I was always teased for being, a girl with a tan. So that was a nice moment. So I'll leave with that one. But then the one that was incredibly impactful, again, college. There was an exchange student. I believe his name was Robert. I was trying to think of his name, and the name Robert came to mind. At least that was his English name. He was from Ghana, and he was an exchange student staying at one of the houses I was teaching violin at. And we went to the same college, so I got to know him because I would show up once a week to the house where he was staying at, and then I'd see him in the hall at college and stuff like that. And one time, I don't know, I ran into him like in the parking lot 'cause I had a car, and I offered to drive him home because I knew where he lived. And the conversation came up. I don't, maybe he asked me why I was brown. I mean, he would have been almost as black as the microphone I'm using. Um, I don't remember what started that conversation, but I did share with him that I was, half black, half white. And he said, I think the sweetest thing any man or anybody on this planet has ever said to me. And he said, the keys of a piano. You have the white keys on the piano and you can play the white keys and that sounds nice. He said you have the black keys on the piano and you can play those and it sounds nice. But you combine the two, it's beautiful music. Oh my God. Yeah, I still love that. I mean, he's not wrong. I'm a classically trained piano player. Um, but that's not the point. Yeah. So I would have been 19, 18, 19 at that point. And that stuck with me. Even saying that, I feel like, oh, I feel all nice and warm and fuzzy inside. Because that's the thing. Like it's nice to like at that point, it's nice to hear from an outside source a validation that you are okay the way you are. And my personal experience being biracial is that it was always a challenge when I was younger because I didn't understand it. Intellectually, I figured it out. I mean, obviously, with one parent, one parent. But it's the acceptance, it's the navigating life, never fitting into one category or another, and always having to explain why you look the way you do. And to a lot of people, they would think it's not a hardship. And I don't claim that it is. I don't feel that it is, but there is an element that is challenging, and it's emotionally challenging. And obviously, I'm not uncomfortable sharing any of this, but I do feel something as I share this. So I know the minute I hit stop, I'm gonna go, oh man, there was this story and this and this and this. I mean, it's just endless. It's endless. It'll continue. And then I'll give you an update sometime on more weird shit that happens when you're biracial. But bringing it back to identity and, if you are, whether you're biracial or not, if there's like to acknowledge that there is, I'm not going to say that you have a struggle. I guess what I want to say is don't let anyone diminish how you feel about yourself and about the experiences you go through when it comes to racial identity or maybe any other identity if this particular topic is not your story. Because we want to feel accepted, we want to feel seen for how we are, and when we have to continue to explain why we are the way we are, for a question is, what are you? Why is your skin this way? Why don't you look more like a black person? You're too white to be black, you're too black to be white, you know, and any issues that pertain to either side, you're like, well, that's not you, you know? It's okay to admit that it's a challenge. Or you just maybe freaking want to ignore it. That's fine too. Um, I'm not here to offer advice. I'm just here to share my experience because I want to hold space. I want you to feel comfortable enough to hold space for yourself, really, to acknowledge if something is bothering you. And especially if it's something out of your control, like, how your racial identity or what you were born into. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. And like I said, if anyone has any feedback for or against or whatever you want to share, I'll leave links on how you can reach out. And yes. So please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys listening, watching. Again, if you're listening, this is I'm wearing a great black and white outfit today as nod to, being biracial. The wigs are now out in circulation. They're going to be out in circulation on this show. I'm bringing that back because now I have the video, which is of course great timing considering I'm going through severe. Oh, right. Hey, I'm not even going to edit this part. One more joke to lighten the mood. I was gonna mention my skin allergies because I've got rashes everywhere. And I had said this on some of the social media posts when I was sharing behind the scenes for this episode, is that sometimes you have to use humor. And I'm not a comedian, but I'm big for using humor and sometimes inappropriate humor, which you will become a fan of if you are listening to the show. In my 30s, I was diagnosed with intolerant skin. It's a little bit more than severe allergic reaction. So I have red blotches all over right now. And the dermatologist told me, because I explained my background, and he said, well, it's your white side is very sensitive. And he's like, if you're darker in the summertime, you probably won't have an allergy attack. I used to joke with my mother way back when I was younger. When I started to understand, okay, on my mom's side, I'm British and English and Irish. My dad's side is black. I can't tell you what kind, like where from specifically. And I always was like, well, you know what? No wonder I'm mad. I have two opposing sides in my head all the time. Well, then being diagnosed with intolerant skin totally makes sense. It's a really bad joke. But you know what? Deal with it. That's how I deal with it. So other perks of being biracial. Intolerant skin. Kind of fitting if we think about what's happening in certain parts of the world. There's some dark humor for you. All right. All right. I'm gonna end it there. So again, thank you for being here with me. We're gonna continue to grow the show, and I am not gonna be shy about the stuff I share here. It's all gonna be from my personal experience. The whole point is to hold space for what a lot of us are thinking. Just to and give yourself space to give you inspiration and space to just say, oh, you know what? That kind of resonates. And again, you don't have to fix yourself. There might be an obvious answer, there might not be. It's just we're navigating life here. So thank you for listening. We'll chat again soon.